Welcome everyone to this fourth episode of the webinar series on generative AI for development and HPC. My name is Nicolas Herman. I'm a coordinator at EuroCC Belgium, and Geert-Jan Becks, also part of the project, is the presenter of these webinars. As usually, these webinars will mainly feature recorded demonstration of using generative AI. And this episode focuses on getting a code review with AI. And there is a dedicated channel for Q&A. So please use this dedicated channel and we will answer those questions at the end of the session. And I recall that EuroCC Belgium is the Belgium National Competence Center in High Performance Computing. We promote and facilitate the use of high performance computing, but also high performance data analysis and artificial intelligence in Belgium. And our mission is to collaborate, share resources, and compiling training opportunities in those related topics. So now let's go to the webinar content. The first part is about using ChatGPT for a Python code review. So since this is a recorded video, if the video didn't play, you can normally play by yourself.
So we can ask ChatGPT to do a code review for us, which may at times be a little, how shall we put it, depressing. But okay, I've got this Python script, monitor.py, and I'd like this reviewed. So ChatGPT does a major, that's really a very good job. So it identifies major issues and potential bugs. So it says there's an incorrect property in the metric class. And indeed, I'm returning self-name, and that would of course be recursive. So that's a typo in the sense that that should be self._name. So that is indeed an issue which went apparently unnoticed. Then incorrect exception handling in file reading function. Okay, so whether this is an issue or not, you can discuss about, because basically I don't want to happen anything if for whatever reason that file cannot be opened. So basically I don't mind that much in this particular case, but okay. Adding some logging might be an option, so that could be considered. And then there is a bug in the mem perpend metric, and indeed, as you can see, although I would want to actually have this measure, what I'm actually computing is the CPU percent. So basically that is likely a copy-paste error at some point. So clearly this should be fixed. It's definitely an issue. Handling of non-existent PID. So in this particular case, if that would be none, psutil process none will raise an error. Okay, so that is not okay. It's slightly a matter of semantics here, because I would say that a non-existent PID is actually a PID that doesn't exist rather than an option which isn't specified. But okay, apart from that, yes, that might be a good idea. Again, incorrect handling of exception. In this particular case, I'm not sure I agree, because basically this exception will occur when the process that's being monitored dies or ends in any way. So basically I would say that handling it in this way is reasonable. And then there is style and readability improvements. So basically, this can be rewritten in a more readable format. Basically, I'd say that's open for discussion, but yeah, that could be done. And then finally, not finally, read and open. So basically there is a redundant try except. Okay, so indeed that could be flattened into a single one. Maybe I would have to verify this more extensively, whether it still does the same thing. Ah yes, it uses a list comprehension to construct a list. Okay, I could live with that. Then improve CLI argument readability. PID. There is a typo. Very good, well spotted. Then there are a couple of other typos in the help, so useful again. And then avoid hard coding sys std out. And indeed that would be more elegant. And the status header can be optimized. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that would be indeed true. Although, frankly, this is not a big improvement in my opinion, but okay. And then adding logging rather than print statements. I'm not sure I agree on this particular one, but okay. Then security, safe file handling. Okay, so yes, that could be a good idea. File edge case handling, invalid CPU affinity. Indeed, on some systems it would not be supported. However, in HPC we're not using that sort of system, so essentially it could be added, but I don't care much about it. The one about zombie processes is rather interesting. So basically that should probably be implemented. So as you can see, there is quite a lot of feedback on the code, and ChatGPT does quite a good job on identifying issues, and it even will be happy to generate the code for me with all the fixes implemented if I would let it.
So now let's dive into the second part of this webinar, where we will explore how ChatGPT can be utilized for a Fortran code review.
This is of course about HPC, so how well does ChatGPT do on a code review for Fortran code? So I took something that is not entirely trivial. It's a linked list implementation in Fortran using pointers. And also it's actually a generic code in the sense that the type of the elements of the list is not predetermined. That can be overridden in other modules, so that basically you can have a list of integers, a list of real values, or whatever. Okay, so let's have a look at the review that ChatGPT generated. So it's going to look at code style, potential bugs, edge cases, memory management issues, and best practices. That's great. So, code style and readability. It starts with some good practices, so these are things which are okay for this particular code, and there are areas for improvement. So apparently the indentation is inconsistent. Some lines have excessive spaces, and then the use of value type is not clearly defined in this module, which is sort of correct, since it's actually a macro and it will be replaced by a preprocessor. So essentially it can't be better defined in this particular module, but okay. Naming of some functions, intuitive, but indeed comments and documentation would be a nice issue. A nice feature. So basically, indeed, it's just the name of the functions and there is no documentation. Okay, so then potential bugs. Again, most stuff seems to be okay. There is a memory leak risk, it says, in remove, pop and shift. So basically, what I should have done is set the pointers to null, well applicable, because otherwise I may have dangling pointers. Okay, I could do that. And then find return returns -1 for missing items. And what ChatGPT suggests is to return 0 rather than -1, because it better aligns with Fortran's default indexing behavior. Okay, you can discuss about that. So clear, it says, can be inefficient because I do a shift in order to clear the list. And that, according to ChatGPT, leads to O(n)² complexity. Now the shift is removing the first element only, so it's actually an O1 operation. And what it does here is in fact doing precisely that. It's in fact re-implementing the shift operation. So, well, okay. Edge cases and robustness. So again, a few things went well. A few other things. An edge case for insert at an invalid position. So apparently it's not really checked whether that actually is a valid index or not. So basically, yes, that would be a good idea to add that. Removing the last element. Again, the pointer should be set to null, which apparently doesn't seem to happen. So again, good catch. Then handling of the empty list in show. Okay. Okay, so that merits review. Indeed, could be that there is a bug there. Okay, memory management, we're also already discussed the clear thing. And then pointer assignment, this was also already mentioned. Best practices, so basically generic handling of value type, we discussed that already. Then improved error handling, we discussed that as well. And then of course it says, well, okay, adding unit tests would be a good idea, which I would agree with. So we get a final verdict, basically a summary of all the things that ChatGPT had as comments about our code. And it gets a final score of 8.5 out of 10, which is quite reasonable. It would be interesting to know how ChatGPT came up with that score, so I can ask. So ChatGPT explains how it gets to the 8.5 out of 10 score. Basically, there is a breakdown into several categories. Each of them is weighted and each of them is rated. And then of course that weighted sum is computed to give the final score. So you get a nice breakdown about code style and readability, performance efficiency, and so on, with the reasons why things could actually get better or why they didn't score as well as you might hope. So basically, it also gives an indication of why it got 8.5 rather than a higher score, but also why it's not lower than that. And then it also gives some advice about how to reach a 9.5 plus score.
And so now the third and final part focuses on the use of sorcery with GitHub to obtain a code review. So let's explore this aspect further.
Another nice way to get a code review is to use the online service Sorcery. You can actually connect that web service to your GitHub repositories, and as soon as you do a pull request, you get a review by the AI which is behind Sorcery. And this is actually rather good, so this is a very nice feature. So once you've activated and logged into your account, you can tune the review settings, and also you can connect to your GitHub repositories. So basically the GitHub app should be installed, and you can set review suggestions or review requirements for each of your individual repositories. When you do a pull request, Sorcery is going to send you an email telling you that it's going to do a code review, and there's some help in how to interact with Sorcery and basically how to customize things and so on. Of course, the more relevant email is the actual review, which you can see here. So again, it is categorized into various potential problem areas, such as general issues, now 4 of those, security testing and documentation are all fine, and there is also an issue with complexity. Okay, so the first issue essentially is that there is a problem in the syntax of a bash script. So basically I check for the exit status of a process in a way that is not really appreciated by Sorcery, and I would agree with that. So that is something that should definitely be changed. So that last if statement here should be replaced by this construction to ensure that we get proper numerical comparison, which is the better way to do things. Okay, the next issue is that the code is not necessarily reproducible the result of it, in the sense that it uses a random number generator, but no seed is set. And that could, of course, give rise to non-reproducibility. In this particular case, for this application, actually I don't mind, but indeed it would be a good idea to actually add that, which should be pretty straightforward by just allowing a seed as a command line argument, or just putting a fixed one, whatever. So the next issue essentially is typos, and there are quite a few of them, so that's quite nice. Sorcery also checks your README files and does some rudimentary spell checking on it, so that's actually quite nice. Then the last thing is about complexity. So basically one of the functions, the create labels function, or the create labels essentially calls a number of functions, one for integer labels, one for float labels, one for string labels, and that's just done through an if-elif construct. But Sorcery says, well, okay, replace that by a dictionary, which is here label creators, where the string representation of the type int, float or string is the key, and the relevant function to generate such a label is the value in that dictionary. And then, of course, it becomes a dictionary lookup rather than an if-elif construct. And that, of course, is much easier to extend and reduces code size a little bit. So all in all, quite a useful review, and via GitHub easy to implement.
So this is it for today. I thank you for joining us. And I recall that the EuroCC project is funded by European Union and Euro HPC GU. And apparently I didn't see any question on the dedicated channel. If you have some, please write it down. And maybe I have also to specify that sorcery is not the same as sorcerly, which is also an AI tool to obtain a like academic paper about one subject. So please be careful when you spell it. And also the sorcery is free for a open source project. So it's also nice to know. And I see there is a question of Bart. I don't know if Gertjan is with us.
Yeah, so the claims of sorcery are a little optimistic in the sense that, yes, most programming languages are supported, but as usual, support level varies in the sense that, again, it's a matter of available training material. So your results for Python, or the sorcery advice for Python, will be much better than that for some other programming languages which are, let's say, less commonly used. For instance, I don't think it does that much for Fortran at the moment. So yeah, again, mileage may vary depending on the programming language you're using.
Yes, so thank you, Gertjan. And there is another question from Olivier.
Okay.
Is Copilot also capable of doing code reviews? GitHub Copilot?
Theoretically, yes, it should be able to. I never tried, to be honest. But basically, you also have a chat functionality. So I'm guessing that you can actually ask it to do a code review. I would have to try. I don't know how well it will do, but it's a good question. Intellectual property,
Yeah.
interesting. So basically, yes, this is a very annoying question in the sense that everyone struggles with it. Yeah, the problem is that generally for, well, there are two things here. So I don't know whether sorcery actually does something with respect to training to the repository. On the other hand, of course, it is public repositories. So in that sense, your code is already out there. So your intellectual property is determined by the license you are actually applying to that particular repository. Then, of course, the question is, and that's a very annoying question, how is this license respected? So it's quite clear that companies like OpenAI actually have used training material that was licensed in such a way that they shouldn't have done that in the first place. They are trying to wriggling out of that, but okay, that's not a discussion. Another thing is that if any AI tool generates code for you, and you use that code, it is possible that you are violating the license agreement of the code that has given rise to this particular answer. Okay, the counter argument is usually that there is no one-to-one relationship between, on the one hand, source code that's being used for training, and otherwise the reply you get. That is true to a certain extent, but not quite true, because I'm really positive that some of the code suggestions that I got came from a single repository, a single source file. So that's then typically with GitHub Copilot. So hence the issue can be, for instance, that the code is derived from source code that's licensed with a fairly strict license. Your own source code might be more liberally licensed, and hence you're in violation of licensing agreement. So that is a very annoying issue, to be honest, and to put it mildly. I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah, maybe Jacopo can ask in the chat if it is okay. And yeah, more questions from Quentin.
Let's see. Opinion on using LLM agents to directly code Python and so on. Yeah. So basically, that is what ChatGPT is doing for you. So essentially, if you ask it to generate Python code, it's in fact going to run that Python code. We will see that very explicitly in next week's webinar on data analysis. So as long as that's running on ChatGPT servers, I don't mind. If it's running on my own infrastructure, I'm not so sure. Because then I'd really want to review that code before I hit the run button. That's for sure. So that's a little bit my suspicion here, or my opinion, if you like. It's a dangerous thing. And it's the same with all agents. If you just let them do their thing, whatever they want, without reviewing, that might lead to, well, interesting and potentially, well, unpleasant results. So that's the general thing. And specifically for code, yeah, I mean, do I really want to run a Python script that will remove all the files I've write access to? Maybe not. So yeah, it's a dangerous thing in a way. And then opinion on using code, dedicated models. Okay. Yeah, so basically there is a very nice open source model which is called Code Llama, which has specifically been trained for code generation and answer questions about code. The advantage of it is that you can run it locally. So you can just run it on your own laptop. Okay, you need a GPU, but strictly speaking, you even don't, but then it's just slow. You will get responses. Well, there will be quite some latency before you get a response, but it does quite a reasonable job. I've experimented with it a little bit, and the results are very promising. And yeah, it's if memory serves, a 7 billion parameter model, unless I'm mistaken, but it's something like that. So it's quite reasonable. And the advantage is, of course, that if you want to get code suggestions on sensitive code, where you really want to make sure that it is not going out in the wild, then that is definitely an option. Sorcery for Vim. No, I did not. So does that mean that there is actually a sorcery plugin for Vim? Is that the what you're asking? Because what I'm using in Vim or in NeoVim is basically GitHub Copilot. So that's what I normally use there.
Yes, there is some part in the documentation of Source3 that can apparently be applied to Vim.
Okay, that is interesting. I'll have a look at it. On the other hand, need to be a little bit careful here because I don't want these AI plugins to start interfering with one another. And basically the risk exists that AI tool number one, whatever it is, gives you suggestions, and that AI tool number two thinks they're not optimal and starts giving suggestions, etc., etc., and you end up with kind of an infinite loop of suggestions that, yeah. So that's essentially the what I would be a bit careful about when using multiple tools at the same time. But I'll have a look at the source reading. It's quite interesting.
And there is a last question from Quentin. The opinion of using interactive canvas.
Yeah. So Canvas is a very nice idea. The problem is only that it is an editor interface, which is fairly primitive in the sense that it's just your classical point and click interface, rather than the key bindings I'm used to. I'm a Vim user, sorry. So basically these key bindings are in my fingers, and I get a little bit nervous when I have to use editors that don't have key bindings or that don't have the Vim key bindings. So that's why typically I'm not really using Canvas. But if you don't mind about that, it's actually a very nice tool, and it's really impressive to see it regenerate code in real time when you make changes. So it's a really impressive tool, but yeah, it's not necessarily for me just due to the user interface, which is, yeah, not to my liking, but that's a personal thing.
Okay, so I guess we exhausted the list of questions. So let me thanks Geert-Jan again for the content and the answer to the questions, and let me also thank you everyone for attending this fourth episode. And for those who are interested, see you next week for the last two webinars about data analysis, and also speak with the documentation. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you all, and see you next week.